We are back. Now, in the beginning of the last video, I introduced this bike here, and then it made no further appearance. And that is because the more that I looked at it, the more I knew that I just wasn't going to make any money off this thing, unfortunately. But fast forward a little bit, and it was before I even finished filming the last video, I actually picked up this gem here. Now, this bike was put out on the roadside, just walking distance from my house. So, like most of my plans, they change. So what we have is two free bikes that surely I can make one good bike out of. The rest of the parts will be jammed back into this bike. I'll list it up for free on Marketplace. But even given away for free, this thing is still going to assist me with a little bit of future profit. Before we get the Scott up in the stand, I just threw the fluid up quickly, remove a couple of the parts that I thought I might need during the build, such as the pedals. I got the seat off and I'll be using the tires. I'll also need to use the chain, which I'll quickly discover as I get the Scott up in the stand and start tearing off the things that I'm going to replace. So I took off the pedals and the bottle cage was a bit twisted. I didn't end up reusing the bottle cage, I just removed it and put the bolts back in. You can see here, there's a section of the chain that is completely seized up. It's also quite rusty, so the chain that is on the fluid is in much better condition and I ended up just swapping those over. The tyres on the Scott are also completely bald, so we swapped those out for the ones that were on the fluid. Now the front end of the bike is completely let down by the condition of the handlebars and just how faded the shifters and brake lever look. So I started by cutting off the grips, quickly removing the levers, and then removing the handlebars. So these just got a good sand and a paint, and while I was waiting for that to dry, I just moved on to other sections of the bike. So the condition of the chain was, quite poor. There was a few seized links, and overall just wasn't in good nick. So swapping that over with the fluid one was, it was very handy to have that spare chain there. And I just put that rusty chain back on the fluid, so I had a rolling bike when I went to give it away. Now the stanchions on these forks are probably the worst that I've ever had to deal with. I didn't want to pull them apart. They're only a very basic model of fork. There's not really much that I can do apart from try and make them look slightly better for sale. So while they're not perfect, considering how they started, they actually come up quite well. So now the paint's dried on these handlebars, I'll get these back in and start tying the front end together. So as usual, got the $9 grips and I'm just using those as a bit of a guide as to where I'm going to put the levers. Now I wasn't sure how well this was going to work, but it actually worked extremely well. The entire assembly of this brake lever and gear lever combination was pretty much all plastic and raw, and you can see that it was quite faded. So this trim gel that I'm using here, I actually use it on the rear valance of mine and Carly's cars. We both have a raw piece of plastic on the rear bumper, and after a while it does become a little faded. So it brings it up back to black, and you can see the difference between the left and right shifters here is it's day and night, and it looks even better in person. There was a few small areas that I couldn't quite get to with just my finger in a rag, so I just dipped the end of a toothbrush in the bottle and got into all those tight crevices. And while they don't look brand new, they look so much better than they did before. And you'll be able to tell here, once I get this grip on, the difference between the before and after is dramatic on camera, but in person, it looks even better. So now it's simply just a matter of swapping all the tires over. So the tires that were on the fluid, while they weren't perfect, they weren't bald. The ones that were on the Scott were completely bald. The ones that were on the fluid slightly narrower, but were in much better condition. So the pedals essentially are the same from the Scott and the fluid, but the ones that were on the fluid had a slightly bigger platform on them, and they were a lot blacker as well in person to look at. And while it didn't make a massive difference, these little things do make a difference to the overall look of the bike when it's finished. So I'll quickly connect up the new chain, and you might be looking at it and thinking that it is a little bit long, but it's not actually on the front ring. It's just wrapped around the bottom bracket. So you'll see in a second, once I get this chain reconnected, I'll put it up on the small ring, and yeah, it is actually the correct length. Then it was just down to a small adjustment of the front and rear derailleur just to make sure that everything was working correctly. Didn't take long to do. I had to adjust the high and low screw on the front derailleur just to make sure that it was sitting in the right spot. And then I just had to tighten the barrel adjuster on the rear derailleur slightly. But overall, the gears already changed quite good. This was just to, make sure that they were working perfect for the next owner. So after I got this adjusted, I got it down off the stand. It was now just a matter of giving it a good clean. But before we did that, I just quickly threw the fluid back up and quickly made that back into a bit of a bike-shaped object for the new owner. So this was the seat that was on the fluid, and it was pretty much one of the only good things that was on the bike. I filmed this pretty much as soon as I'd finished filming the last video. So I still had this seat just sitting on the bench, which was off of the Trek. I figured if I was giving this bike away for free, then I was going to keep the good bits and I would just make it just a rolling bike. The next person can decide what they want to do with it. They might only want it for tubes. So I just put the ball tires back on these wheels, connected up the brakes, connected up the gears, and made it a working bike. I mean, it's not perfect. There is a lot of stuff wrong with it, which I'll explain at the end of the video. And I mean, I probably put more time and effort into this bike than I really should have, especially for a free bike. But I feel better giving a bike away to somebody knowing that they can actually get on it and ride it. Now, out of all the things that you'll see me do on camera, this is probably by far the dodgiest thing that I'll ever do, but it is for a free bike after all. Now, the grip shifter rubber that was on there was all torn up and gummy, and just touching it left that black residue on your hand. So I ripped that off and then just used a couple of bits of inner tube to wrap around the shifter because it was just a bit hard to change gears without a rubber grip on there. So I just taped a bit of this inner tube on, and I mean, it looks like crap, but it actually works quite well. And it just means whoever does get the bike, if they legitimately just need a bike to ride around, it makes it a rideable bike. Everything that I've done to this bike, while it doesn't make it a perfect bike, it does make it a rideable bike. And I mean, it's free, so you really can't complain. And that wraps up the flip. So I got the Scott, which is obviously the bike that's going to make us the money. I've also just given the fluid a little bit of a once over. I've still listed it for free, but I feel a lot better giving somebody a working bike, at least to start with. There are a lot of issues with it though. So there's tears in the seat. We've obviously dodged up that grip shifter. The cranks are a little bit bent. The front wheel is extremely out of true. I've just quickly trued it up enough that it doesn't rub on the brakes. But I mean, overall, the brakes work, the gears work. You can sit on it and ride it around. The tires hold air. So I listed it for free, and typical, within like 10 minutes, I had a whole bunch of messages. There's someone that's coming to grab it now. They should be here in like 15 minutes. So this will be gone out of my hair. And yeah, like I said, the seat that was on this bike was actually in quite good condition. So considering I was giving it away for free, I thought I'll keep that, whack the old seat on with a few tears in it, and yeah, it saves me throwing that in the bin. And this will save me a little bit of money on the next bike that I get that has a tear in the seat. So while it did seem like a piece of junk when I initially got it, it did come in very handy. We used the pedals and the chain off of the fluid. I've also got to keep this seat. So while I wanted to do this completely for free if I could, I did choose to put new grips on it. Now, I could have got away with using the old grips. They weren't that bad a condition, but with the new grips on there, the bars painted up, and the trim black on the levers, the whole front end of the bike looks brand new. So the investment was well worth it. So while the grips cost 10 bucks, a decent secondhand seat on Marketplace is around $10. So by keeping this, I'm just gonna pretend that we did the whole thing for free and that I purchased this separately. But yeah, in any case, a $10 investment for this bike is great value. I'm pretty sure that I'll get around $150 for this bike. This is obviously going for free. I've got this saddle for the next one. So this was a bit of a between job kind of task. And if I added all the hours up that I put into it, it would be no more than 2 hours to complete this whole thing. So for 150 bucks for 2 hours work is, yeah, it's pretty good. And considering I didn't use any money to go and pick up this bike, I literally rode my bike around the corner and then towed it back home. Quite a good investment. So it's been a few days and we've listed this bike at 175. Now, it hasn't sold, but it does have a whole bunch of views and listing saves. So I've dropped the price to 150. Hopefully that will notify the people that are watching the item, and yeah, it will prompt a sale or at least a couple of offers to come through. But yeah, in any case, it hasn't sold, so hopefully we'll have an update in the next video. But going back to the previous video, and I asked what time you thought I would get if I attempted that Strava loop for a second time. Now I got a couple of guesses at 43 and some change. And considering that the KOM there is 42 minutes and 12 seconds, I thought that was pretty generous. So I went out there a couple of days later and I actually surprised myself. I come away at 42 minutes and 14 seconds. So 2 seconds under the KOM. Now, if it was a minute or more under, I would just call it a day and I would be still stoked with how well this bike performed. However, 2 seconds, 3 days later, I went back out and yeah, 41 minutes and 47 seconds. So super stoked with how this bike went. And if you're in the area, I would highly recommend going out to Ewanmatic Dam, picking a section of trail and going for a ride or a run. It's super scenic, nice and quiet, and yeah, a beautiful place on the coast. Between both of these bikes here, we have two great examples of just how low the barrier to entry is when it comes to either flipping bikes or even just building yourself something that you can go out and have a bunch of fun on. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you have been considering trying to flip bikes, then hopefully the videos on this channel are somewhat of an inspiration. If you did enjoy this video, a like and a comment go a long way with helping to build the channel. Also, if you know someone that might be interested in this sort of content, please share it with them. And yeah, until the next one,